All right, welcome back to the Barbell Medicine live stream. I'm Dr. Jordan Feigenbaum. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. I think they're all going here. So just to give you guys a little background about what Barbell Medicine is, we are bringing modern medicine to strength training and strength training to modern medicine. We've got other physicians on staff and other healthcare professionals, and we are trying to basically improve the health, knowledge, and empower the community to ultimately make it a better place. And your role today is to submit questions. So if you're on YouTube, you can shoot us some questions. If you're on Instagram, you can submit some questions, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Got a bit of housekeeping to do. If you're not signed up for our newsletter, I highly encourage you to do that. We've got another one going on Friday. We recently posted an article by Charlie Dixon about coming back from injury. I would check that out. It's over on the Barbell Medicine website, barbellmedicine.com. And let's see what else. We've got another podcast going up on Friday. It's going to be from the Q&A we just finished back in San Antonio, so you should be able to get all of, your barbell medicine fix this week. So let's see if we can get some questions going from you guys. What's up, everybody? I'm going to scroll up here and see what we've got. Is there an optimal range? An optimal range. Wait, no, optimal age. The question is there an optimal age to go on blood pressure medication? Ideally, you'd never be on blood pressure medication. That being said, some people will need to be on blood pressure medication to control their blood pressure. But you wouldn't want to do it younger versus older. And in fact, there's some guidelines suggesting maybe different ranges in order to start that. But in any event, this is not one of those things where there's an optimal age. You just would ideally be able to manage your blood pressure sans blood pressure medication. Leah did a live stream yesterday. So after this live stream is complete, you go watch Leah's. Or, you can go watch it now. Either way works. Jordan, thoughts on bowel movements during high RPE squats and deadlifts? It's never happened to me. So generally opposed to those things. Yeah, generally opposed. Let's see, Danger asks, hey doc, I chipped my elbow during a fall. Osteochondritis dissecans. What impact can training have on this? Training's not going to have any impact on that. Osteochondritis dissecans. Yeah, so as long as you've managed that injury and that bump in the road appropriately, I would train normally like it never happened. So yeah, I wouldn't do anything special about it. There's no special guidelines for that with regards to resistance training. So, are you planning seminars in Europe? Yeah, and it will be in Berlin in August. So it's on the website. You can either check the Barbell Medicine website to sign up, or you can go to Eventbrite and look at our manager profile link thing. So you can get there from the Barbell Medicine website too. So. Let's see. Hi, I'm a family doc in New Jersey. I treat your podcast like CME. Well, hopefully our podcast will be CME. That's not outside the realm of possibility. We're got some things in the works with regards to continuing medical education. Jordan, what did you think about that study that found good hypertrophy results with intraset stretching? I am not familiar with that that study, although the one that I'm thinking of, basically they postulated that the stretch was increased mechanical tension on the muscle, and the actual study methodology was like relatively low volume, in that there was no additional plateau. I don't think that stretching is a good way to get increased muscular hypertrophy compared to more training volume. But what do I know? Just a doctor. No, I'm just kidding. I just always wanted to say that since I think the movie was Happy Gilmore, when after he hits the guy with the VW. Let's see, why didn't you do ortho for residency? I thought about it, but it's a 5-year residency, and I wasn't going to practice. I knew I wasn't going to practice after residency before I started residency, so no point in doing that, What positives are there to doing only one main exercise a day, 6 or 7 days a week? I guess your training sessions could be shorter, but overall your training volume is relatively low. But if that's the only way you can train, what are you going to do? Not train. So Jordan, long time no see. Is this IG live? Will it be a regular thing again? Hopefully, yeah. When am I planning to release new templates? As soon as I get all the bugs that we can find worked out of them, then we'll do it. Then we'll get some new templates up. I'm pretty excited about them. So let's see. Why does your pre-workout mix caffeine and creatine to use before and after workout? Is there a benefit after workout of creatine? So that particular supplement, PeriRx, with caffeine is generally more of a pre-workout because it does have the stimulant in it. You might want a stimulant post-workout too, but that's, based on your own caffeine consumption habits. That being said, there's no, as far as timing creatine, it really doesn't matter before, after, or completely separate from your workouts as long as you're dosing it on a regular basis. And I had a video about creatine I posted. It was probably a year and a half ago on YouTube, but I would look at that. Yeah. Is there any benefit to using partial range of motions for hypertrophy work? No, not really. I mean, so hypertrophy, the main sort of things contributing to hypertrophy are motor unit recruitment, range of motion, and volume. So you want to use a intensity, or whatever intensity you choose, you need to do enough reps each set to generate a lot of motor unit recruitment. So you can lift heavy weights to near failure or light weights to near failure, and that'll do the trick. Then after that, you need to do enough volume to drive the hypertrophy response, which is, we tend to see this dose-response relationship, more volume, more hypertrophy. Although that has to do with your level of trainedness. You wouldn't want to do a ton of volume up front for somebody who's untrained. Similarly, you wouldn't want to do a little bit of volume for somebody who is trained. They're going to need more. And then the last part of this is the range of motion, because you get to train more muscle groups. That being said, if you were specifically trying to hypertrophy a particular area, then perhaps you might use a decreased range of motion to target that. But that's the only thing I can think of. We don't usually do that for people. It's not really a big staple of our training recommendations. Hey there, do you think some people are more prone to injury than others, ergo athletes who are more injured than their colleagues? I mean, there's definitely genetic component and epigenetic components in there that are not, that represent inter-individual differences in injury rates. But I think a lot of that stuff has to do with social learning and conditioning prior to engagement in a particular activity. So how people grow up, what their knowledge is about injuries, pain, stuff like that, it all contributes. So yeah, there's a huge difference. All right, let's go to YouTube's. Let's see, Doc, I just want to say thanks for the gains. Hey, you're welcome. Any opinions on the recent JAMA study on eggs and total cholesterol links to all-cause mortality? Yeah, I mean, so when you look at all the data on eggs, or as the Kiwis say, eggs, basically what you tend to see is that people with higher diets higher in saturated fat, particularly when it goes above that sort of 10% 10% of total daily calories, that range, people tend to have worsening lipid panels, specifically atherogenic type of lipid panels, and that tends to contribute to this atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk. Dietary cholesterol, outside of folks who have increased amount of uptake of dietary cholesterol or certain cholesterol sort of genetic related disorders of familial hypercholesterolemias, those people don't, outside of that, those cohorts, you don't tend to see people have issues with dietary cholesterol no matter what level, because any cell can make the cholesterol. Rather, diets high in saturated fat tend to be the bigger deal. And I think that if you were looking at principles of healthy nutrition, the first thing would be make sure that your diet is the correct calorie intake to produce the correct body weight and body composition. So that's the first thing you need to do. The second thing, it would be lots of fruits and vegetables, which most people, 80%, or not 70% of the United States doesn't actually get anywhere close to. Then after that, you talk about limiting saturated fat to 10% or less of total daily calories, and dietary fiber intake would be high, and protein intake would be from lean protein sources. That would be the sort of hierarchy right there. And I don't think I would actually waste my breath on talking about dietary cholesterol, to be honest. Let's see. Should different compound movements be programmed differently? People often say they bump their squat volume up to 3 times a week to improve more quickly, but usually only twice a week for deadlift. Is 3 times deadlift too much? I don't think so. And I don't think I would necessarily say that lifts should be programmed the same or differently, just in general. I don't think there's one rule. I think the total volume per week is going to be important, and then the total fatigue, which is going to be dependent on the movements that you choose. That being said, the way I typically kind of see this play out is that I'll have people deadlift and squat 3 times a week, and then I'll usually have them bench 3 or 4 times a week. That's usually how I have people do, or some type of variation that works like that. Yeah. Are you gonna have Alan Flanagan? Are you gonna have Alan Flanagan write any more articles for you guys? Can't get enough of this stuff. I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to get Flanagan again back on our podcast, and then also have him write some more stuff. See if these people can keep their political comments appropriate. Looking cute, Doc. Hey, thanks. I always thought that I had a voice or a face made for radio. Turns out it's all right. Does the group programming change dynamically month to month, or is it more like a template with the support of others doing the same? No, it changes. Yep, it changes, and I do the programming for that. So there you go. Let's see. Do you program any speed power work ever? Why or why not? I do in certain instances. So one of the ways in which strength is specific to the velocity of movement. So if you are trying to improve high velocity force production, then you would want to train with high velocities, meaning and just from a biological standpoint, from a muscular structure standpoint, one thing that happens when people train with very heavy and thus slow velocity weights is that their muscle fiber types tend to shift. Now, broadly speaking, there's 2 types of muscle fibers, 2 categories rather, type 1 and type 2. And type 2, there's multiple subtypes within there. You can think of the type 2X fibers as like the super fast twitch, super high velocity, but very quick to fatigue muscle fibers. Those would be your, the fibers you want for vertical jump, for broad jump, for throwing a shot put, javelin, stuff like that, like very high force output, but very, very quick to fatigue. And then you have these type 2A fibers, which are more resistant to fatigue, but still put out a good amount of force. Now, when you train with heavy weights at slow velocities, you get the fiber type shift from the type 2X to the type 2A, which is a problem if you really want that high velocity force production. On the other hand, if you train with high velocities, then you get a shift from the type 2A to type 2X. That's typically how we think about this. So if you are trying to train for high velocity force production, the bulk of your training shouldn't be slow and very, very heavy. Doesn't mean none of your training should be like that, but some of it. On the other hand, if you're trying to get better at something like powerlifting, which is low velocity, every step of the way, then I don't think you should spend too much time working on high velocity force production. It's not specific to your goal. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Joe Rogan Experience Taubes versus Guillain debate. So as a physician scientist, just a person who's been in this sort of scientific field for a long time, biology major, master's in anatomy and physiology, medical degree, all that. I'm in that scene, right? Listening to it, I can understand and empathize with Dr. Guillain's sort of frustration talking to Gary. So basically, I think he sums it up nicely. This might be, I'm paraphrasing. He's like, Gary likes to tell stories, which are great if those stories are backed up by evidence. And then Gary fails to produce any evidence. And Gary's thing is, I don't want to get into the evidence because, it's not as meaningful. And I'm like, well, if you're trying to convince scores of physicians, scientists, research, all these people that you're right, then you're going to need to produce some evidence. And even the studies funded by your own research group do not agree with you. And so Guillain's got the the current evidence on his side. And it's interesting that he's not married to any of these theories. He just basically is taking the sum of the evidence, mulling it around in his brain and coming up with, well, here's what I think currently. And when there's new evidence, it changes. And he admits like how that's happened over time. So anyway, having listened to the whole thing, I can understand where people who are not in the scientific community, I can see where they'll listen to it and they'll be like, gosh, this Dr. Guyanega, he's so annoying. And the way he, kind of talks to Gary, he says, Gary, all this other stuff, that might be annoying and they may find that off-putting, but hopefully people can see past that and, listen to it for what it is. But Taubes comes with no data, no unique take on this, and, has been thoroughly rebutted over and over and over again. I can't take somebody who thinks that hypothesis is true seriously. It's just, yeah. Okay, let's see. Is there a relationship with left ventricular hypertrophy and steroids? If so, what does left ventricular hypertrophy lead to as a consequence? So, yeah, there's some evidence suggesting, and I assume you mean anabolic steroids, not things like prednisone or the corticosteroids, because there's different types. So to the extent that anabolic steroids, some of them can increase blood pressure, and there's multiple mechanisms by which that can happen, but doesn't always happen, certainly. And then blood pressure regulation in and of itself is very complicated. And it's not just a direct, start taking anabolic steroids, blood pressure goes up. But effectively, once the heart has to start pushing against a higher pressure circuit, you can get some left ventricular hypertrophy. The muscle of the heart actually has to get bigger in order to put pressure against a now higher pressure circuit. The other thing, there's some direct cardiac remodeling, some evidence of that. Not that much in humans, though. Not much evidence in humans on that. And it's some anabolics. So I wouldn't be very confident in cardiac remodeling and left ventricular hypertrophy being a function of that with anabolic steroids. That being said, there are risks and benefits to any sort of intervention, including anabolic steroids. And so I don't know that I would write that off and say, well, Feigenbaum said that it doesn't matter for this one particular risk. That's not what I'm saying. And then two, there's a whole host of risks associated with anabolic steroid use. In particular, abuse of anabolic steroids, can be a lot of risks there. But in some contexts, perhaps the benefits are better. So anyway, all right. Running the bridge now. Is it okay to do extra bodybuilding days on rest days, or should I add it to the GPP days? Will this ruin strength gains? I mean, it just depends. Like, how well trained are you? In general, I don't want to, dampen somebody's fire and say, hey, yeah, don't train, don't do this extra stuff, because usually more training gives you more results. But at the same time, like, if you're not very well trained, then adding additional training volume is only likely to actually hurt things like hypertrophy. So for instance, let's say I put you on a hypertrophy program. The first 2 weeks of this thing, you were brutally sore, right? Because it represented a significant increase in training fatigue and training volume, and that caused you to be super sore. You actually wouldn't grow that much during that period of time. It's basically overwhelming your resources to actually deal with stress. Your biggest growth rates would happen after you've sort of acclimated a little bit. So the typical person that the bridge is made for is either just coming off of another beginner program or is not very well trained, hasn't really used RPE before, wants to get into strength training. That's who it's for. And so I just don't think it's appropriate to add a bunch of extra stuff in that program. I think some of our later templates certainly have that option, but I probably wouldn't do that for somebody running the bridge right now. All right. If you're in the developmental block and your bench peaks earlier than your other lifts, would you continue the block and auto-regulate the bench to match the other lifts, or continue all lifts peak? Yeah, I think I'm trying to understand what you're asking me. It's basically like, if you think that your bench peaks faster than your other lifts, like, what would you do about it? And yeah, you would kind of extend the training, the regular, longer on the bench press and not take so long to peak. So your peaking block or peaking cycle, or however you're going to refer to it as, would have more traditional bench training, in the early part of it compared to the squat and the deadlift. That being said, like, peaking stuff, we typically, it's over a week, 10 days. Even our free peaking templates, the last week is kind of the actual peak the weeks before it tend to just be regular training, some with differences in intensity and total volume depending on kind of what group you fall into, whether you peak super fast or super slow. That's just, we put out 2 like general templates like that. Let's see. Are mini cuts worth it or useful if you don't plan on staying at the weight you mini cut to? I mean, I don't know. It depends on what your goal is. Like, does it keep you leaner long term? Not really. If it helps your compliance, then that's a win. And if you're a weight class athlete, you could maybe make an argument for that. There's no real, answer that I'm super confident about. So, yeah. Did you see the starting strength April Fool's video? They were trolling me. I didn't see it. The starting strength's irrelevant. No one cares about starting strength outside of starting strength. So, like, there aren't like powerlifting coaches like sitting in, remote corners of the world, who are actually training high-level athletes, or Olympic weightlifting coaches or CrossFit coaches who are like, gee, I wonder what starting strength thinks about this. Like, no one cares. So that you can lump me into that. Let's see. A nurse practitioner I work with said nurse practitioners know more about physiology than an anesthesiologist. Thoughts? I don't know that I would say that. That being said, I don't know that I would say that anesthesiologists know more physiology than nurse practitioners. I think that knowing physiology is like a broad thing. It's like it'd be like saying knowing geography, right? It's like that's like a general term. But specifically, like if you're talking about the physiology that goes on while somebody's under anesthesia, I know who I'd put my money on to know more physiology. If we're talking about an anesthesiologist's knowledge of like primary care related, preventative medicine and the associated physiology, then perhaps a, nurse practitioner who works in a family clinic has more knowledge on that stuff. But I just don't know what kind of professional would say that. And so without knowing the context, I don't think that I would want to, throw them under the bus. But most professionals don't talk like that to each other. So, yeah. My kinesiology professor has now adopted Barbell Medicine's views on pain and corrective exercise, taught the class exercise in general reduces injury. That's pretty cool. It has the benefit of being true. So things that improve strength generally tend to reduce injury risk. So that's cool. This past Thursday, I had a sebaceous cyst removed. I have stitches there and some swollenness and redness of the skin. If you were in my shoes, after how many days will you train? I don't know where the sebaceous cyst was. If it's like in the palm of my hand, which would be a very odd spot, then it'd be hard to like hold on to a bar. That'd be also though, if it was like on my back where the bar goes, it'd be hard to like back squat, I don't know. It depends also what your physician said about when you're clear for activity based on the risk of like dehiscing the wound that was closed up. So if it's me, and this is not advice to you, and I had some sort of repair done where I have stitches, basically I'd probably train a few days afterwards, 3-4 days. I'd try to do something and see how it went. But that's not medical advice to you. I'm not your doctor. I have no idea your case. That's just me thinking about if I had, if I'd gotten stitches on a cyst that was removed somewhere fairly superficial, that's probably what I would do. Tip for a 165-pound 16-year-old trying to get stronger, but body fat is around 15%. Well, I don't think I'm worried about your body fat at 15%. I don't know how tall you are, so I don't know if you need to gain weight. But I would train and enjoy it. Find some aspects of training you enjoy and slowly put on weight over time. Yeah, by being a calorie surplus. Let's see. Like gaining a bunch of body weight quickly is a bad idea for most folks. Let's see. Conventional deadlifts in the 10 rep ranges, yay or nay? I've done a set of 10 before. I think the most I've done for 10 is 550. Yeah. Can you get rhabdomyolysis from overtraining even though overtraining doesn't really exist in the context of strength training? No, not really, because then how would you be describing overtraining? You get rhabdomyolysis from too much exercise that you are not prepared to do or due to the cumulative effect of environmental factors making a certain bout of exercise way more stressful than it otherwise would be. Also, if you've had it before, you're at higher risk. If it's warmer outside, you're at higher risk. Yeah. Let's see. Are there any circumstances under which you would not recommend that Are there any circumstances under which you would recommend that an athlete not perform a Valsalva? Yeah, but I don't know if that person would be clear for physical activity. So, yeah, people with vascular conditions that need to be repaired, for instance. I laugh because it's like, these are serious conditions. And I guess the more interesting question to me is there a way to produce force that's like at a high percentage of somebody's force production potential? So let's say using 70% or more higher of your maximum voluntary force production. Is there a way to do that without doing a Valsalva maneuver? The answer is no. So you don't have an option. You don't have a choice. That being said, if you had an aortic aneurysm that needed to be repaired, I wouldn't do a Valsalva until it got it repaired. If you knew that you had this aneurysm in your brain that needed to be repaired, I probably wouldn't do a Valsalva. But you're doing a Valsalva every time you get on the toilet, every time that you have an orgasm. Like, it's happening all the time. So I would, if somebody's been cleared for exercise, cleared for activity, I usually don't have any reservations about them doing a Valsalva. Hey, Jordan, how can you get better at bracing while doing higher reps? I always struggle properly bracing after the 6th or 7th while squatting and deadlifting. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense via a rep range thing. I think you're talking about a load thing. And I would actually argue that, you have to brace, or I should say your mechanics have to get or remain a certain level of efficiency to do reps under fatigue. On the other hand, if you're really worried about some particular aspect of bracing that you're trying to fix or change or improve technique, I don't know that higher rep sets at challenging loads are the best way to do that, especially if you're trying to improve skills at lower reps, higher weights. Does that make sense? You're you need to practice for the test. So I'm not quite sure that I understand your approach to the problem. But I don't generally worry about bracing. I teach somebody how to do the Valsalva. If I see something going wrong there, I'll adjust. But I'm not hypercritical of ooh, that 6th rep though, the bracing wasn't quite as good. It's it's within the realm of normal, and most people's technique tends to improve on their as they become more and more trained. Not necessarily needing a coach to point out every single thing or being hypervigilant towards one form technique breakdown. Let's see. Just got an email that there's a proposal in Congress to add a nutritional institute to the NIH. That'd be cool. Sure. Let's see. Want to turn the new HLM template into a press focus. What press variation exercises could I sub for close grip bench and pause bench? You could do pause press and a high incline press, or press without a belt, or pin press. Yeah, that would all work. What is occurring physiologically during warm-up sets that makes them beneficial? Increased muscular temperature, which decreases the viscosity on various components of the muscle, improved motor patterning as you get to practice the things, decreased sensitivity to discomfort, pain, improved self-efficacy as you are able to warm up, and basically priming yourself for the task at hand. Let's see. Jordan, if I train sumo deadlifts for my competition deadlift, would I use a sumo stance for my assistance exercises like pause deadlifts, etc.? Yeah, that's what I would do. Jordan, I mistakenly said intraset stretching when I really meant the interset stretching study. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. But just to be clear, one study doesn't change the game, right? So, and it doesn't mean it might kind of shift things a little bit, but again, static stretching I don't think is useful for anything outside of if you have limited options and you're trying to desensitize somebody to a particular position, but it's definitely not useful for hypertrophy as a general rule. Why is it some people's reps don't translate to their maxes and vice versa? What causes this difference, and is there a way to optimize either skill? Yeah, I don't think that most people's rep work tends to transfer very well to their single rep performance unless they've already had a lot of experience doing singles before, meaning that they're already like pretty good at doing them, and so any sort of strength improvement can be readily translated to the skill that is displaying that strength. This usually is like people just a long history of doing a bunch of singles. So if you want to get better at doing singles, you got to do more singles. And that's why I don't really care about does your 5RM go up if you're a powerlifter. Like on the one hand, that tends to show me that you're likely getting stronger, but if you haven't practiced your singles, I don't know like how well that's going to transfer over, you know. Can dumbbell Romanian deadlifts be treated as a deadlift variation? They can, but there's a loading problem, right? Like how heavy can you do them? I think I've done a set of 10 RDLs at 500. So I don't know how I would load that on dumbbells. I mean, I know what the math is. I just don't know, can you find 250-pound dumbbells? Who needs gym music when you can listen to Jordan's Instagram live? Oh, this is like the worst gym music ever. Just some dude talking. Apologies in advance. Other than the science of running, do you have any recommendations for good running endurance training info? No, not really, to be honest. I think that's a good place to start. The guy's website's pretty good too. Yeah. Do you think MD PhDs should do a residency? They typically do. So, I mean, if you want to practice medicine in the United States and you're an MD PhD, so basically what this you do the first 2 years of your med school, then you go do PhD research, then you come back and do your clinical years, then you do a residency, and then you practice and probably combine that with some research. That's typically how it goes. So they typically do. Just signed up for the seminar in St. Louis. Will be a 5-hour drive. Would you recommend driving through the night or stay an extra night in a hotel? I mean, basically you're just driving from 5 hours. It depends how late you're going to be driving. I would just get to St. Louis. St. Louis is pretty cool, man. If you can get down to St. Louis, stay somewhere downtown in the Central West End. I would stay in the Central West End, or that's where I would be. Yeah. Can you explain any science behind the max amount of protein per meal? There is no max amount of protein per meal. Does a limit exist for optimal gains? Well, sure. There's a limit above which no additional protein synthesis occurs, but that doesn't matter. What matters more is total calories and then total essential amino acid load per day. So I just wouldn't think about it like that, like, oh, am I eating too much protein per meal? It's probably not the case. What's probably the case is that somebody's calories are incorrect. Their other anabolic stimuli like training is not in line. And they don't stick to their diet on a regular basis. Those are like the main factors I would think about. Jordan, do you think somebody who had club foot at birth should squat heavy? Well, I assume that the club foot was repaired surgically, and if they can ambulate without assistance, I think that squatting is a reasonable option for them. Hello from Vancouver. Hello from Santa Cruz. What's up? How does someone unfamiliar with RPE progress using it? So you get better at using it by using it, right? And then you don't need to be precise with it. If you misrate things, that's fine. It's always there whether you want to use it or not. So let's say I had programmed for you 75% by 5 reps by 5 sets. And you work up to that, and your first set of 5 feels like I maybe could have done one more rep. Suggesting that whatever 1 rep max that you're basing this percentage work off of is not correct for the given day. So you have 2 choices in that scenario. Choice 1 is to ignore that, man up, and then try to do the rest of your sets of 5. And you may find that you're able to complete them, okay? But you don't get a badge of honor for that. The gains, angel doesn't come and bless you with a bunch of extra strength. Effectively, what you've done is if you just did 5 sets of 5 at a very high RPE when it was supposed to be 75%, what which is, not that heavy. That should be like RPE 6 or 7. Effectively, what you've done is you've got a big stress, okay, that may not generate an adaptation in proportion to that amount of stress. So you may just have overcooked yourself or applied too much stress without necessarily generating the adaptation that you wanted. 5 sets of 5 at 75% should be a walk in the park. Maybe that was supposed to be, medium stress or even lower stress kind of workout, and you just, laid it all out there. You sent it. You don't get a badge of honor for that. That's not training intelligently. So, so the second option would have been you did the first set and you're like, wow, that feels harder than 75% should be. I'm going to take some weight off the bar. And even though you're not explicitly using RPE, you take a little weight off the bar, you have auto-regulated that load based on what's happening that day. And I think it's better to have a scale with predetermined like numbers and sort of correlations you can make to like percentage charts and stuff, which RPE has all of that. I think it's a better option. So any chance you'll be holding a seminar in Vegas? Maybe Stan Efferding brings us out there. Sure. Greetings from Austria. What's up? Was wondering if there are any negative side effects or health issues of drinking coffee late at night. I mean, if it messes with your sleep. Otherwise, you got pretty good evidence that drinking coffee, even in like fairly high volumes, tends to, be relatively healthy, if not health promoting. Yeah, so I should say relatively benign, if not even health promoting. Yeah. Advanced strength template. Any ideas on release? I'm hoping I have. It's already written. I'm just finding bugs. That's the thing. So it's April 3rd now. Let's give me a week, man. Last time, perform more than 3 movements in a session regularly, and how often? Oh, I don't even know what this question is. That's not even a question. Sorry, guys. St. Louis is not cool. Well, I could be biased because I'm from there, but I don't live there anymore, so maybe I agree with you. I don't know. I have some fond memories of St. Louis. I have some not so fond memories of St. Louis too. Does sniffing ammonia cause cell death for the epithelial cells in your nose? I am not aware of that occurring. Do you get to play much golf these days, and what do you play off? I do not. Last time I played golf was in San Diego like a few months ago with my dad and my brother, and the time before that was like a few years before, and I played with my dad and my brother, so this may surprise you, but I don't get to play much golf. Is sex legs really a thing? Some fighters usually abstain because they're afraid it will affect performance. This has actually been studied. So when you ask a question, there are some things you should do afterwards. You should say, I wonder if there's any evidence that actually answers this question directly. So in this particular case, there are studies that address this question directly, and they suggest that there's no such thing as like decline in performance secondary to having sex or any other sort of like intimacy within the 24 hours prior to a fight or athletic event. Both of those have been tested. So you look for, that's the first thing you do, is you look for, is there any direct evidence suggesting an answer to this question? If there's not any direct evidence, like directly that's answering the question, then you have to reframe the question to use evidence to answer your reframed question, and then you can like form an opinion. That being said, you shouldn't hold that opinion to be like shouldn't be super confident in that opinion, because again, it's not answering the question that you had directly, but it gives you at least a starting point to make a somewhat informed opinion. Yeah. Let's see. Hello from Capitola. Yeah, maybe Capitola instead. Not Santa Cruz proper. Yeah, that's true. All right, Patrick. All right. Let's see. I got a kidney stone recently. CT scan confirmed 1 millimeter. Don't have personal history of kidney disease and have been eating a lot of protein lately. Doctor didn't seem concerned. I share your doctor's lack of concern. Yeah. I saw Lane Norton debate Paul Saladino. Paul Saladino's contention was that plants are toxic. How can a PhD put that sort of BS out there? His views seem to be getting traction. I don't know. It would be very difficult to eliminate all of the fringe folks in each field, without some sort of censorship policy, and I don't think that's the direction we need to go. But look, there are doctors who will tell you that vaccines are bad, but that's, a 0.01% of all physicians. And so you're like, is it what's more likely, that these people are the geniuses, right? And none of the literature supports what they're saying, right? From unbiased parties. None of their colleagues support what they're saying. None of the anecdotal reports that, are free from bias support what they're saying. So then how do you come to this conclusion? I don't know. Some people have some wacky, zany opinions. Sean Baker's an orthopedic surgeon and trying to tell everybody you should just eat meat. And it's like, okay, you're not an expert in this field, so why are people listening? I don't know. All right, moving on. What's up, Sarah? Hola. Are you familiar with bifid iliopsoas and related hip problems? No. I think that's probably made up. Not to be, short, but it sounds like something that might be inventive. Doc, when you talked about transgender athletes and fairness, you focused about lean muscle mass, but isn't there more to sports performance, like factors that won't be influenced by hormonal replacement therapy? Sure. Sporting performance are influenced by a ton of things, not necessarily sex-related, though, unless you're talking about, like, sociocultural inequality as far as participation and coaching and opportunities to play and, expectations, etc. I mean, I think I could make a stronger argument against transgender athletes competing in sport based on psychosocial factors than biological factors. On the other hand, I would have to accept or have to think about or have to believe that sports are supposed to be fair. They're not. Sports aren't fair at any point. They're unfair. And I think that you're really just trying to have a playing field that is somewhat level. And I think that if you try to regulate sports too much to try to make it fair, then you shouldn't you wouldn't even have to hold a competition. You'd say, well, everyone's the same, so everyone wins. I don't know if it's the best idea to separate sports by sex. Well, in this case, gender, male and female. I don't think that's necessarily the best way to do it, but I'm not in charge and no one's asking me, and I don't necessarily have a solution either. And I think when you're trying to think about, is it okay for transgender athletes to compete in sport, just as a general rule, I think it has to be. If it's not, if you're saying no, they cannot participate, that violates the fundamentals of Olympism set forth by the Court of Arbitration in Sport, and it just violates the general notion of sport. They literally write in there that there shall be no discrimination based on all these things, race, ethnicity, gender, and other. They left it open, but also said gender. So I think from that standpoint, all right, so we're including everybody. And then if you're trying to say it's not fair because previously they had exposure to all these levels of testosterone, then you just go through and you look at studies looking at testosterone performance, and then you're like, oh, well, that doesn't appear to matter. And then you come up with another reason, right? And you just go through. And so what I've been doing with this article is basically hearing what other people have to say that makes them feel uncomfortable by allowing and even then encouraging transgender athletes to compete. And after listening to all these arguments, this article has gotten really long. And I'm excited to publish it. Just got to fine-tune some things and refine my arguments. And I expect it to be unpopular. I wish people would read it with an open mind. I wish people would be nice. But I have low expectations. So, all right. Would 1.5 rep squats be a useful variation for hypertrophy? I don't see any reason why you would do 1.5 rep squats over regular squats. Yeah. I don't think that squats are better for hypertrophy than leg press even. So, it's just, again, if the range of motion isn't markedly different, the motor unit recruitment isn't markedly different, and the total volume you can train with isn't remarkably different, then I don't know if there's a big difference in why you pick one variation over another. Have I ever been to Rolla, Missouri? Yeah, that's where I dislocated my hip. I went to Phelps County Medical Center, and they put my hip back in place. What is your opinion on Bang energy drinks as a pre-workout, being that it has creatine, caffeine, and BCAAs? I think the creatine dosing and the other potential ergogenic aids in that drink are really low. But it'd be very difficult for me to comment on a specific brand of supplement without feeling potentially vulnerable to somebody saying or trying to come back at me with legal action. So I'd prefer not to comment about a specific brand at this point without the label right in front of me. How to maintain strength during military basic training. I don't know if you can unless you could train with weights. But you're still going to be active, and if your absolute strength drops by 5 or 10% while you're away from barbells, it's fine. It'll come back. It's not like you're on bed rest. Just carry on, man. Jordan, what rate of weight gain would you recommend for a post-novice lifter whose waist circumference is not close to 40 inches? Is 1 pound a week too much, too little? Currently 6'3" and 220 pounds. Yeah, I mean, I would actually have 37 inches probably be the cutoff. 1 pound a week is fine, and it's 4 pounds a month. It's roughly 2 kilos. So one interesting study that not recently came out, but I like in addressing this program or addressing this question is Bazin et al. Basically, they put it's like 50 dudes, maybe it's 43 guys, the age 19 to 40. They split them up into 4 groups. One group got a testosterone, no exercise. Another group got testosterone with exercise. Another group got no testosterone, the placebo. They thought they were on testosterone and exercise. And the last group was the control group. So no testosterone, no exercise. In any event, the people on 600 milligrams of testosterone, I think it was enanthate. I forgot if the study was done in the United States or Europe, where they enanthate or cypionate. In any event, they were on 3 times the dose of TRT that you normally get. So really high doses of testosterone, and they were doing resistance training, like 4 sets of 6 on squat, bench, and another exercise 3 days a week. Like, this is like pretty legit. They said there was at 70%, 80%, 90%. So it's kind of like they were actually resistance training on a bunch of testosterone. The people on drugs after 10 weeks and resistance training gained 6 kilos. Okay, so basically in 3 months, they were able to gain about 12 pounds of lean body mass. So to me, that suggests that if we're looking for like an upper limit of like how quickly can you gain lean body mass under the most favorable conditions, that seems like a reasonable sort of amount, 4 kilos per month. And that's when you know that somebody's taking super physiological doses of testosterone and resistance training. Yeah, so I think if I had to recommend a range, to think somewhere between, like 1 to 4 kilos, 4 kilos being more aggressive and probably too aggressive for a lot of people. But, there are some folks who are going to respond well to training, and that seems reasonable. 1 kilo being on the low end per month. But anything more than that, I'm just kind of, it's laughable to me at this point. So thoughts on sumo deadlift? Perfectly viable way to train a pull from the floor. It's fine. Wisdom teeth removal. How do I approach training post-op? So actually, we used to work in a oral surgeon's office, so we did this all the time. It depends. If you're going to be under some light sedation, you're probably not going to train that day. If you need painkillers to control your pain, you're probably not going to train while you're on those. The problem is the bleeding too. That being said, just ask the surgeon, like, when can you exercise? Just ask him. You might take the rest of the week off. You might want to take the rest of the week off. That's all. It's fine. It's just a blip in the radar, But anything longer than, a week, I would start to be like, I feel like I need to do a little training, but you should definitely ask your doctor on that. Typically, you perform 3 movements per session, 3 or 4, yeah. Last time I regularly did more than 3. I mean, this training block I'm doing more than 3, yeah, so. Some research by Schoenfeld suggested creatine better improves upper body hypertrophy than lower. What do you think about the validity of this study? Well, if we're using the term validity as it's used in the research, I don't think, I think you'd be hard pressed to show that long term, and I think even Schoenfeld would say that. So, yeah. Sorry to repost. Oh, here we go. But what are your thoughts about squatting to a bench to gauge depth? I don't like it. Yeah. I currently squat like this. Is this completely terrible? No, it's just, I would just not do it. You don't need to do it, man. Take the bench away. Let's see. At what age, say pediatrics, does one need to be conscious of ingesting good fats, if otherwise no issue? Seeing a lot of info about fats and brain development. Yeah, that's junk. I just wouldn't consume a diet high in saturated fats as a general rule. Yeah. Any advice for someone coming back after lifting after C-section? Yeah, once you're cleared to participate, there are really no restrictions. It's going to be more personal tolerance. So, yeah, that's it. And I would check out the Canadian exercise and pregnancy guidelines. I believe there's a specific comment on there about post-cesarean section, but I think they just, as I recall, I think they recommend just as long as you have surgical clearance, then you whatever you can tolerate, you can train. Jordan, you answered my osteochondritis dissecans question. This happened days ago and haven't done the recovery process at all, but I pressed and benched after this event. Should I not do these? I don't know. I haven't evaluated you, man. How do you know if you haven't done any, how do you know that you have that if you haven't been diagnosed? Yeah. What are your thoughts on conventional deadlifts, mixed grip using straps? I don't use straps, but know of someone who does this. I would rather just do double overhand with straps. I mean, if you have straps, I don't know why you would do mixed grip. Doesn't make any sense to me. Why aren't people nice? Oh, just on the internet. Yeah, people are more aggressive and more condescending on the internet. And that may be a function of just the way that people can't communicate face to face. But on the other hand, like the anonymity on the internet, also just people are meaner. And the way that you can respond immediately without even reading or hearing somebody else's like counterpoint, people just, they just go in. Let's see. If you subscribe to the research review, do you get access to all the previous issues? I don't think that's what we're offering right now, but I don't know. I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure. Using trisets in every workout at 60% intensity, 4 sets of 15 in all muscle groups, reducing body fat fast. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I don't know that I would do that, but but if you like it, man, go for it. Would you date the female version of yourself? I mean, I guess I have to say yes, right? How come some people, mainly CrossFitters, say, I started eating more carbs and lost weight, goes against energy balance, so what could be going on there? Most people without explicit tracking have no idea the calorie intake that they take in on a weekly basis on average. Yes, there's been a lot of people, not just CrossFitters, this has happened over time, for a long period of time, where people say, oh yeah, I started eating more and lost weight. That is impossible. It's not happening, period. So when somebody says that, it's a red flag automatically, like, oh, I'm eating more and now I lost weight. No, you are not. You are absolutely not eating more calories and losing weight. Positively not. This is an IQ test. If you say that, I am concerned about your IQ level. It's just as simple as that. Why? There's like some magical belief system, and people start thinking about hormones. They don't know anything about what they're talking about. Like, they don't know enough outside of like the terms, and they know enough to be dangerous, but certainly not enough to actually be speaking intelligently on the topic, and certainly not enough to be advising other humans on how to eat. So things about metabolic damage, things about eating more and losing weight, those things are just, red flags. Let's see. Hey, Jordan, how was your nutrition like during your time at college? I ate a lot. I think when I went into college, I was 165 pounds. When I graduated college, I was 220 something. So I ate a lot. Yeah. Adductor pain when coming out of the bottom of the squat, but box squats don't hurt. Should I continue to do box squats until the pain from normal squats subside? It's reasonable. You could also do pause squats. You could also alter your stance. You could also lower the load. I'd be wondering how the load differences between box squats and regular squats too. Is it bad to not eat carbs around training first thing in the morning? I have 1 scoop of whey before and after training, but wait a few hours till my first meal with carbs. Harmful? I mean, no, it's not like you're like gonna die. I mean, we're all gonna die, but it's, you know, it's not gonna really compromise your outcomes. I wouldn't worry about it. I'm drinking coffee. Yeah. What should I do if I'm nicer on the internet than in real life? Should I focus on my bench press? That sounds like an excellent solution. Excellent solution. Try to get Strength of Specific book on Amazon. It's not available. Oh. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Contact Chris Beardsley. RPE scale, how much do you dislike doing live streams? I kind of like them. I wish that I was famous enough to have like a producer, you know, like somebody else here, like reading questions and working the cameras and everything else. It's just like, yeah, it's a little stressful, you know. Am I familiar with bifid iliopsoas? Still not familiar with it. Nope. Why the Ohio Power Bar over the Texas Power Bar? I would like the Texas Power Bar. Yeah, you ask Austin. I prefer the Texas Power Bar. My dad is having heart transplant surgery within the next couple days. Anything you can tell me to help my worries? I mean, I think that in general, most cardiac surgeons are very well trained at this type of procedure. At this point, for your father, the benefits outweigh the risks, and I think that he's in good hands, likely. So, yeah, spend time with him, tell him you love him, all that fun stuff. Am I familiar with the concepts about MEV and MRV as they relate to a method of volume management? I am. If so, what are your thoughts? We do not use those. Not because they're bad, or just, you know, we don't find them to help in aiding prescription or description of what we're doing. So, yeah. Let's see. Doc, did you dye your hair? I can't keep it for myself. You're so handsome. Oh. Hey, I did not dye my. Yeah, I dyed it like salt and pepper here, right here. 6'8", 57 years old. Hell of a time adding weight to my squat on the bridge 1.0. How's your squat? I mean, what does it look like? You know. Let's see. Regarding your most recent post, what would you suggest completing singles at the end of your work sets for an extended period of time? ? I tend to overshoot singles, and I think this may benefit me. Yeah, I mean, do it for like 2 or 3 weeks, recalibrate. I mean, I'm planning to do it the rest of this week to recalibrate and then go back to normal training. Thoughts on red light therapy? Not useful. Let's see. Would you recommend using the slingshot over the floor press as an overload movement? Without any additional context? Sure. I don't have strong convictions about that, but yeah. All right, so I've been on here for almost an hour, so I'm going to sign off. Just some additional announcements. You guys have been great. Thank you so much. Share this with your friends. If you enjoyed the video, if you're on YouTube, if you comment below, that'll be super great for the algorithm gains. So as soon as this is live, you can post on there. But if you're on Instagram, you want to share this video, get people exposed to Barbell Medicine and me, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you're not signed up for our newsletter, you should do that. We've got a new newsletter dropping on Friday. Got more articles, videos, things coming your way. And as always, I'm super happy that I could spend this time with you. So everybody, have a nice day, and we'll talk to you guys later.